Before we dive into this story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The last thing Olivia Hartley expected when she woke up that Saturday morning was to end up kissing a complete stranger in a rose garden while wearing a bridesmaid dress that made her look like an overgrown peony. But life, as her grandmother used to say, had a twisted sense of humor and an excellent timing for disasters. Olivia sat at her tiny kitchen table, coffee mug clutched in both hands like a lifeline, staring at the pale pink monstrosity hanging on her closet door. The dress looked like it had been designed by someone who genuinely believed that tulle could solve all of life's problems and that women secretly wanted to resemble wedding cakes. Her roommate Chloe wandered out of her bedroom, took one look at the dress, and winced in sympathy. Chloe had the kind of effortless beauty that made fashion designers weep with joy, all long legs and perfectly tousled dark hair, while Olivia had what could charitably be called girl-next-door charm and what she privately thought of as aggressively average features. Brown hair that refused to hold a curl, hazel eyes that couldn't decide if they were green or brown, and a figure that clothing designers apparently forgot existed when they made bridesmaid dresses. Just once, Olivia thought, she'd like to be in a wedding where the bride didn't choose a dress that made everyone look like they were auditioning for a period drama about the worst fashion era in history. But her college roommate Rebecca had always had questionable taste, as evidenced by her choice of groom, a finance bro named Chad, who talked extensively about cryptocurrency and his CrossFit routine, often in the same sentence. Olivia had smiled and nodded through the engagement party, the bridal shower, and approximately 17 group chats about centerpiece options, because that's what good friends did. They showed up, they wore the ridiculous dress, and they pretended to care about whether the napkins were eggshell or ivory. What are the chances, Olivia wondered as she attempted to zip herself into the dress, that she could develop a sudden illness between now and the ceremony? A very specific illness that lasted exactly 6 hours and then miraculously resolved itself. Chloe appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her own Saturday plans of yoga pants and an oversized sweater that probably cost more than Olivia's entire wardrobe. "Want me to help with that?" Chloe offered, gesturing to the zipper that Olivia was wrestling with, like it was a personal enemy. "Unless you want to show up to the wedding with your back exposed, which honestly might improve the dress." Olivia laughed despite herself and turned around, letting Chloe work the zipper up her spine. "How bad is it?" she asked, not entirely sure she wanted the answer. Chloe was quiet for a moment, which was answer enough. "You look like a very pretty cupcake," she said finally. "A cupcake that someone spent way too much money on, and that's going to give everyone diabetes, just by looking at it. But a pretty one, nonetheless." "Fantastic," Olivia muttered. "That's exactly the look I was going for." Cupcake chic. The wedding was at some exclusive estate in the Hamptons because of course it was. Rebecca had somehow landed a fiancé whose family had the kind of money that made regular wealthy people feel poor. The kind of family that had a house in the Hamptons that they called a cottage, despite it having 12 bedrooms and a wine cellar that could double as a bomb shelter. Olivia had never been to the Hamptons before. Her family vacations growing up had involved camping trips, where her father insisted on teaching them survival skills they would never need, and her mother spent the entire time worrying about bears. This was decidedly different. The estate sprawled across what looked like several acres of perfectly manicured lawns, with gardens that appeared to have been designed by someone who took the concept of flowers very seriously. There were roses everywhere, climbing up trellises and spilling over stone walls, their scent so sweet it was almost overwhelming. White tents had been erected on the lawn, their sides billowing gently in the breeze, and Olivia could see dozens of round tables covered in linens so white they practically glowed. String lights were already hung, even though it was only 2 in the afternoon, waiting for evening to transform the whole scene into something out of a fairy tale. Olivia climbed out of her Uber, careful not to trip over the layers of tulle that seemed determined to tangle around her legs, and made her way toward the house. Other bridesmaids were already arriving, a small army of women in identical pink dresses, and Olivia felt a brief moment of solidarity with them. They were all in this together, united by questionable fashion choices and their affection for Rebecca. The bride herself was inside the house, having what Rebecca's mother kept calling her moment, which apparently involved a lot of champagne and a professional makeup artist who charged more per hour than Olivia made in a week. Olivia found her way to the designated bridesmaid's room, which was larger than her entire apartment and had better lighting. Rebecca was holding court in the center of the room, already in her wedding dress, looking absolutely radiant in the way that brides somehow managed to do. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant updo, her makeup flawless, her dress a masterpiece of lace and silk that probably cost more than a small car. She squealed when she saw Olivia, rushing over to embrace her in a cloud of expensive perfume and excitement. "You made it!" Rebecca exclaimed, squeezing Olivia tight enough to make breathing difficult. "I was worried you might bail." "The thought crossed my mind," Olivia admitted, returning the hug. "But then I remembered that I look amazing in pink tulle, and I couldn't possibly deprive the world of this fashion moment." Rebecca laughed, pulling back to look at her. "You're the best, you know that? I know this whole thing is ridiculous and over the top, but it means everything that you're here." Olivia felt her annoyance at the dress melt away, replaced by genuine affection for her friend. "Of course I'm here," she said softly. "Wouldn't miss it for anything, even if I do look like a cupcake." "You look beautiful," Rebecca insisted, then turned to address the room at full volume. "Okay, ladies, we have exactly 2 hours until showtime. Hair, makeup, and mimosas in that order. Let's make this happen." The next hour passed in a blur of hairspray and champagne bubbles. Olivia submitted to having her hair curled and pinned, her face painted with more makeup than she usually wore in a month, and her nails inspected by Rebecca's sister, who had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them. By the time she was deemed wedding ready, Olivia barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked like a shinier, glossier version of herself, like someone had run her through an Instagram filter in real life. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock in the Rose Garden, which gave Olivia exactly 30 minutes to touch up her makeup, drink another mimosa for courage, and contemplate whether it was too late to fake an emergency. She was standing near one of the large windows, looking out at the garden, where white chairs were arranged in perfect rows, and an archway covered in more roses marked where Rebecca and Chad would exchange their vows, when she heard the commotion downstairs. Raised voices, the sound of someone running, and then Rebecca's mother's voice, raised in what could only be described as controlled panic. Olivia exchanged glances with another bridesmaid, and they both moved toward the door, drawn by the universal human instinct to witness drama. They found Rebecca's mother at the bottom of the grand staircase, her face pale beneath her expertly applied makeup, talking rapidly into her cell phone. "The groom's brother," she was saying, her voice tight with stress. "The best man. He's not here. There's been some kind of accident. He's in the hospital." Olivia felt her stomach drop. The best man was supposed to walk with the maid of honor, was supposed to give a speech, was supposed to be an essential part of the wedding choreography that Rebecca had spent months planning. "Is he okay?" someone asked. "He'll be fine," Rebecca's mother said, still holding the phone to her ear. "Some kind of car accident on the way here. Minor injuries, but he can't make it. Chad is beside himself. They're very close." "Where's Rebecca?" Another bridesmaid asked nervously. Does she know? She's about to find out, Rebecca's mother said grimly, starting up the stairs. Someone find me a backup best man. Anyone. I don't care if it's the gardener or the caterer or someone we pull off the street. We need someone to stand up there with Chad, and we need them in the next 20 minutes. Olivia watched the chaos unfold with a sense of detachment that came from knowing there was absolutely nothing she could do to help. This was beyond her pay grade as a bridesmaid. Her job was to wear the dress, walk down the aisle, and try not to trip. Disaster management was someone else's responsibility. She decided that the safest place to be was outside, away from the panic. So she slipped out a side door and made her way toward the rose garden. The air was cooler out here, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of flowers and fresh, cut grass. Olivia walked along a stone path, careful to keep her dress away from anything that might stain it, and found herself in a more secluded part of the garden, where an old stone bench sat beneath an arbor heavy with climbing roses. She sat down, grateful for a moment of peace, and pulled out her phone to check her messages. Chloe had texted her a series of increasingly ridiculous GIFs. Her mother had sent a reminder to smile in all the photos, and her ex-boyfriend had apparently chosen today of all days to like one of her Instagram posts from 3 months ago, which was either an accident or a cry for attention that Olivia had no intention of acknowledging. She was debating whether to block him or just ignore it when she heard footsteps on the path. Olivia looked up and froze. Walking toward her was quite possibly the most attractive man she had ever seen in real life. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that looked artfully tousled in a way that suggested either expensive styling products or genetic good fortune. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit that fit him like it had been designed specifically for his body, which it probably had, and his face was the kind of handsome that made people forget how to form complete sentences. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes that were such a striking blue. They looked almost unreal in the afternoon sunlight. He also looked absolutely miserable. His expression was tight with stress, his jaw clenched, and there was a phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in low, urgent tones. I understand that, he was saying, his voice deep and carrying easily in the quiet garden. But I don't know what you expect me to do about it from here. He paused, listening. And Olivia saw his free hand clench into a fist at his side. No, I can't just leave. It's my brother's wedding. I promised I'd be here. Another pause, longer this time, and the man's expression grew even more strained. Fine. Handle it however you think is best. I'll deal with the fallout later. He ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring down at his phone like it had personally offended him. Then he looked up and seemed to notice Olivia for the first time. Their eyes met, and Olivia felt something electric pass between them, a jolt of recognition that made no sense, because she had never seen this man before in her life. She would have remembered. You definitely would have remembered a face like that. I'm sorry, he said, his voice softer now, apologetic. I didn't mean to interrupt your peace and quiet. You didn't, Olivia said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded when her heart was doing gymnastics in her chest. I was just hiding from the chaos inside. He smiled at that, a real smile that transformed his whole face from severely handsome to devastatingly attractive. Chaos is a good word for it. I'm hiding too. From the groom's family demanding I fix everything. From my business partner, who thinks I should be working instead of attending a wedding. From the general expectation that I should have my life together at all times. Olivia found herself smiling back. That sounds exhausting. It really is, he agreed. And then, as if making a decision, he walked over and sat down on the bench beside her. not too close, maintaining a respectful distance, but close enough that Olivia could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. "I'm Olivia," she offered, figuring that if they were going to sit together, she should at least know what to call him. "Ethan," he replied, and held out his hand. Olivia shook it, very aware of how warm his palm was against hers, how his grip was firm without being aggressive. "So what are you hiding from, Olivia?" "Just the general stress of being a bridesmaid," she said. "The dress that makes me look like a pastry. The expectations that I'll be charming and photogenic. The fear that I'll trip walking down the aisle and end up as a viral video on social media. All the usual worries." Ethan glanced at her dress, and his smile widened. "You don't look like a pastry. Maybe a very elegant cupcake." Olivia laughed, surprised by how easy it was to talk to him. "That's what my roommate said. I'm choosing to take it as a compliment." "You should," Ethan said. "Cupcakes are underrated. They're portable, individually sized, and they make people happy. Those are all admirable qualities." "I've never thought about cupcake philosophy before," Olivia said, grinning. "But you make a compelling argument." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the wedding preparations distant and muffled. Olivia felt herself relaxing in a way she hadn't all day, the tension draining from her shoulders. There was something about Ethan that made her feel at ease, like they were old friends catching up rather than strangers who had met 5 minutes ago. "So," Ethan said eventually, "how do you know the bride?" "College roommate," Olivia explained. "We lived together for 3 years and somehow remained friends, despite my habit of leaving dishes in the sink and her habit of having full conversations before 6 in the morning." "Rebecca is a morning person." "Aggressively so. She once tried to get me to join her for sunrise yoga, and I nearly ended the friendship on the spot." Ethan laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. "I like you, Olivia. You're refreshingly honest. It's one of my more endearing qualities," Olivia said. "Or one of my fatal flaws. Depends who you ask." Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that suggested he did it often when stressed. "I should probably get back," he said reluctantly. "My brother is going to wonder where I disappeared to." Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the small pang of disappointment in her chest. "Of course. Can't have the best man going missing." Ethan's expression shifted slightly, something flickering across his face too quickly for Olivia to identify. "Right. The best man." He stood up, straightening his jacket, and looked down at her with an expression that seemed almost wistful. "It was nice meeting you, Olivia. I hope you don't trip walking down the aisle. And if you do, I promise not to share the video." "Thanks," Olivia said dryly. "Your support means everything." He smiled once more, then turned and walked back down the path, leaving Olivia sitting alone in the rose garden, with her heart still doing strange things in her chest, and the distinct feeling that she had just met someone important, even if she couldn't explain why. Olivia sat on the bench for another few minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Had she just flirted with a complete stranger at her friend's wedding? Had that been flirting? She was notoriously bad at reading signals. For all she knew, Ethan was just being polite, and she was reading way too much into a pleasant conversation. But there had been something in the way he looked at her, something in the warmth of his smile that suggested, maybe, possibly, she wasn't imagining things. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca in all caps. "Get back here. Ceremony starts in 10 minutes." And Olivia reluctantly stood up, smoothing down her dress and trying to arrange her face into something that looked less like, "I just met the man of my dreams, and more like I am a calm and collected bridesmaid ready to perform her duties. She made her way back to the house, where the other bridesmaids were lined up and ready, bouquets in hand, and forced smiles firmly in place. Rebecca's mother was doing a final head count, her earlier panic replaced by the steely determination of a woman who would make this wedding happen through sheer force of will if necessary. "Okay, ladies," she announced, "we have a slight change of plans. The original best man can't make it due to an emergency, but we've found a replacement. Everything will proceed exactly as planned, just with a different person." Some of the bridesmaids exchanged glances, but no one argued. You didn't argue with Rebecca's mother when she had that look in her eyes, the look that said she had planned this wedding down to the last detail, and nothing, not even a missing best man, was going to derail it. Olivia took her place in the lineup, third from the front, and accepted her bouquet from one of the coordinators. The roses were beautiful, pale pink and cream, tied with white ribbons. And they smelled incredible. She could hear music starting in the garden, the string quartet that Rebecca had hired playing something classical and romantic. One by one, the bridesmaids began their walk down the aisle. Olivia watched them go, each one disappearing through the doorway that led to the garden, their pink dresses bright against the greenery. Her palms were starting to sweat, and she gripped her bouquet tighter, reminding herself that all she had to do was walk in a straight line and not fall. That was it. Simple. Basic. Something toddlers could do. When it was her turn, Olivia took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway into the garden. The seats were full of guests, all turning to watch her approach, and at the far end of the aisle stood Chad in his tuxedo, grinning like a man who had won the lottery. The officiant stood beside him, holding a small book, and next to Chad stood the best man. Olivia's heart stopped. It was Ethan. Ethan, who she had just been talking to in the rose garden. Ethan, who she had flirted with and told about her cupcake dress and her fear of tripping. Ethan, who was apparently Chad's brother and the replacement best man, and was now staring at her with the same shocked recognition that she felt. Oh God. Oh no, this was not happening. Except it clearly was happening because there he was, standing at the altar, and here she was, walking toward him. And somehow she managed to keep putting one foot in front of the other, even though her brain was screaming at her to turn around and run. She made it to the front without tripping, which felt like a minor miracle, and took her place with the other bridesmaids. Ethan's eyes followed her the whole way, and when she finally looked directly at him, he gave her the smallest smile, just a tiny quirk of his lips that somehow conveyed surprise and amusement and something else she couldn't quite name. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Olivia was vaguely aware of Rebecca making her entrance, looking stunning as she walked down the aisle on her father's arm. She heard the officiant speaking, heard Chad and Rebecca exchanging their vows, heard the guests laughing at some joke she missed entirely because she was too busy trying not to look at Ethan, while simultaneously being acutely aware of exactly where he was standing and what he was doing. It was exhausting. When the officiant finally pronounced Chad and Rebecca husband and wife, the garden erupted in applause. The newly married couple kissed, to the delight of the crowd, and then began their walk back down the aisle as a married couple, which meant it was time for the wedding party to pair up and follow them, which meant Olivia had to take Ethan's arm and walk beside him in front of 200 people, while pretending everything was completely normal. Ethan appeared at her side, offering his arm with a formal gesture that would have been perfectly appropriate if they hadn't spent 20 minutes earlier telling each other about their flaws and comparing her dress to baked goods. "Shall we?" he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I promise not to let you trip." Olivia took his arm, feeling the solid warmth of him through the expensive fabric of his suit. "This is so weird," she whispered back. "You could have mentioned you were the best man." "You could have mentioned you were a bridesmaid," he countered, though his eyes were dancing with amusement. "I thought you were just a random wedding guest hiding in the garden. I thought you were just a random groomsman with business problems," Olivia shot back. They began walking down the aisle, and Olivia was hyper-aware of every point where her body touched his, every place where the silk of her dress brushed against his suit. Cameras flashed around them, guests smiled and waved, and Olivia kept her own smile firmly in place, while her mind raced with the implications of this situation. She had flirted with the groom's brother. She had told him personal things. She had sat alone with him in a garden and felt things she definitely should not have been feeling about someone she had just met. And now they were going to have to spend the entire reception together, sitting at the head table, dancing the wedding party dance, acting like everything was fine, when in reality, Olivia's entire concept of fine had just been thoroughly demolished. They made it out of the garden and into the area where the wedding party was gathering for photos. The photographer was already barking instructions, arranging people into various groupings, while Rebecca fussed with her dress, and Chad looked like he couldn't quite believe his luck. "Bridesmaids and groomsmen," the photographer called out. "Let's get some shots of you paired up." Of course they needed photos of the pairs. Of course Olivia was going to have to stand close to Ethan and smile while cameras captured this moment for posterity. She moved to where the photographer indicated, and Ethan followed, positioning himself beside her with the easy confidence of someone who had done this before. "Have you been a best man before?" Olivia asked quietly, while the photographer adjusted his equipment. "Twice," Ethan replied. "Both times for Chad. He has a habit of falling in love quickly and dramatically. This is his third engagement, though the first one to actually make it to the wedding." Olivia blinked. "Third engagement?" Rebecca didn't mention that. "She probably doesn't know," Ethan said with a slight grimace. Chad tends to edit his own history. The first two were in college and didn't last long enough to matter. This one seems more real. "I hope." "That's reassuring," Olivia said dryly. "Nothing says lasting love like third time's the charm." Ethan laughed, a sound that made several people turn to look at the psalm. The photographer seized the moment, clicking away. "Perfect," he called out. "That natural chemistry. Give me more of that." Olivia felt her cheeks heat. Natural chemistry. Great. Just what she needed, documented in professional photography. The next hour was a strange kind of torture. They posed for what felt like hundreds of photos in every possible configuration and location on the estate. Olivia's face hurt from smiling. Her feet hurt from standing in heels on grass, and her awareness of Ethan next to her had evolved from distracting to overwhelming. Every time he touched her, even just a hand on her waist for a photo, she felt it like an electric shock. Every time he smiled at something she said, she felt her heart do that stupid fluttering thing that she had thought only happened in romance novels. This was bad. This was very bad. She didn't do things like this. She didn't fall for strangers at weddings. She was practical, sensible Olivia, who had a 5-year plan and a retirement account, and who had sworn off men entirely after her last relationship ended with her ex-boyfriend confessing he had been seeing someone else for the last 3 months of their time together. She did not have space in her life for complicated feelings about impossibly attractive men who were related to the groom and probably lived in a completely different city and had business problems that sounded expensive and important. But her heart apparently had not received that memo, because it kept insisting that Ethan was different, that the way he looked at her meant something, that the conversation in the garden had been the start of something, rather than just a pleasant interlude. Finally, mercifully, the photographer declared himself satisfied and released them to head to the reception tent. Cocktail hour was in full swing, with guests mingling and servers circulating with trays of champagne and tiny appetizers that looked too beautiful to eat. Olivia accepted a glass of champagne and tried to look like she was having a wonderful time, instead of fighting an internal battle with her own emotions. Ethan appeared at her elbow, his own glass in hand. "So," he said casually, "should we talk about the elephant in the room?" "What elephant?" Olivia asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. "The fact that I definitely flirted with you in the garden without knowing you were part of the wedding party," Ethan said, his voice low and warm. "Or the fact that you flirted back." "I don't know what you're talking about," Olivia said, taking a sip of her champagne. "I was just being friendly." "Friendly," Ethan repeated, a smile tugging at his lips. "Is that what we're calling it?" "What would you call it?" Olivia challenged, surprised by her own boldness. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the way Ethan was looking at her. Maybe it was the fact that she was tired of being sensible and practical and the kind of person who always made the safe choice. Ethan's expression grew serious, his blue eyes intense as they met hers. "I'd call it the best conversation I've had in months. I'd call it a moment of genuine connection with someone who didn't know who I was, or what I do, or how much money I have. I'd call it the reason I've been thinking about you for the last hour, instead of paying attention to anything else happening around me." Olivia's breath caught. "That's," she started, then stopped, not sure what to say. "That's quite an answer." "It's the truth," Ethan said simply. "I don't usually do this. Talk to strangers. Feel this kind of immediate connection. Ignore my responsibilities to sit in a garden and discuss cupcake philosophy. But something about you made all of that seem not just possible, but necessary." Olivia stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I don't usually do this either," she admitted. "In fact, I actively avoid doing this. I have a whole system designed to prevent me from making impulsive decisions involving attractive men at weddings." "And yet here we are," Ethan said softly. "Here we are," Olivia echoed. They stood there for a moment, the party swirling around them, people laughing and talking and celebrating. But Olivia felt like they were in a bubble, separate from everything else. She knew this was probably a terrible idea. She knew that whatever this was, it was complicated and impractical and had disaster written all over it. But for once in her carefully planned life, she didn't care. "Olivia," Ethan said, and there was something in the way he said her name that made her whole body respond. "Would you?" he started, then stopped as his phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted from warm and open to carefully neutral. "I'm sorry," he said, genuine regret in his voice. "I have to take this. It's work. It's always work." "Go ahead," Olivia said, trying to hide her disappointment. "I'll be here," trying not to trip over my own feet or say anything too embarrassing. "Impossible," Ethan said with a quick smile. "You're doing great on both counts." Then he stepped away, phone already pressed to his ear, and Olivia was left standing alone with a glass of champagne and a chest full of confused feelings. She watched him walk to a quieter corner of the tent, his posture shifting as he spoke, becoming more formal, more guarded. This was the other Ethan, she realized, the one who had business problems and responsibilities and a whole life she knew nothing about. She wondered which version was the real one, or if maybe they both were, and that was what made him so compelling. The reception moved into full swing with all the pageantry and orchestrated joy that expensive weddings demanded. Dinner was served at tables, decorated with enough flowers to supply a small florist shop. The food was probably amazing, though Olivia barely tasted it. And speeches began with the kind of heartfelt emotion that made half the guests reach for tissues and the other half reach for more wine. Olivia sat at the head table, very aware that Ethan was seated directly across from her, close enough that their knees occasionally bumped under the table, each touch sending sparks up her spine that she tried very hard to ignore. She mostly failed. Chad gave a speech about finding true love and Rebecca being his soulmate, which was sweet even if Olivia privately thought that anyone who used the word synergy in a wedding speech might need to reevaluate their romantic vocabulary. Rebecca's father spoke about giving away his little girl, getting choked up in the middle, and having to pause while his wife rubbed his back supportively. And then it was Ethan's turn. He stood up, champagne glass in hand. And Olivia watched the entire room shift its attention to him. There was something magnetic about Ethan, some quality that made people want to listen when he spoke. Maybe it was the confidence in his posture, the way he commanded space without seeming to try. Maybe it was the warmth in his voice when he began to speak, genuine affection evident in every word. "I've known Chad my entire life," Ethan began, "which is both a blessing and a curse, because I've witnessed some truly questionable fashion choices and life decisions." There was laughter from the crowd, and Chad raised his glass in acknowledgement. "But I've also had the privilege of watching him grow into a man who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to go after it, even when what he wants seems impossible." Ethan's eyes found Olivia's across the table, and she felt her breath catch. "When Chad told me he was going to marry Rebecca," he continued, his gaze still locked with Olivia's, "I'll admit I was skeptical. Not because Rebecca isn't wonderful, she absolutely is, but because I've seen my brother fall in love before. I've seen him convinced that this time was the real thing, only to watch it fall apart. But this time is different." Olivia couldn't look away. It felt like Ethan was speaking directly to her, every word carrying a weight beyond its surface meaning. This time, Ethan said, "I can see that Chad has found something rare, someone who sees him for who he really is, flaws and all, and loves him anyway. Someone who makes him want to be better, without making him feel like he's not enough. That's what real love looks like. It's not about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes your imperfections feel like they matter less." The tent was completely silent now, everyone hanging on Ethan's words. He finally broke eye contact with Olivia, turning to address Chad and Rebecca. "To my brother and his bride," Ethan raised his glass. "May you continue to find joy in the everyday moments, laughter in the challenges, and comfort in knowing that whatever comes, you'll face it together." The room erupted in applause and the clinking of glasses. Chad pulled Rebecca in for a kiss, while guests cheered, but Olivia barely registered any of it. Her mind was still processing Ethan's speech, the way he had looked at her, while talking about imperfections and real love, the intensity in his eyes that suggested he wasn't just talking about his brother's relationship. Or maybe she was reading into things. Maybe she was projecting her own feelings onto a generic best man speech that happened to be well delivered. Maybe she needed to get a grip and remember that this was just one day, just a wedding, just a moment that would pass and leave nothing behind but photos and fading memories. The dancing started shortly after dinner, with Chad and Rebecca taking the floor for their first dance as a married couple. They swayed together to some romantic ballad Olivia didn't recognize, looking blissfully happy and completely absorbed in each other. Then came the father-daughter dance, the mother-son dance, and finally the wedding party dance, which meant Olivia had to stand up and take Ethan's hand once again. "Ready?" Ethan asked, leading her onto the dance floor. "For what exactly?" Olivia countered, allowing him to pull her close as the music started. Another slow song, naturally, because the universe apparently wanted to torture her. "To pretend we know what we're doing," Ethan said with a slight smile. "I should warn you, I'm not a great dancer." "Then we'll be perfectly matched," Olivia said, "because I'm aggressively mediocre at everything involving rhythm." They began to move, and Olivia was surprised to find that they fit together easily, their steps syncing without conscious effort. Ethan's hand was warm on her waist, steady and sure, and Olivia let herself relax into the dance, into the moment, into the feeling of being held by someone who made her forget all the reasons this was a bad idea. "I meant what I said," Ethan murmured, his voice close to her ear. "In the speech, about finding someone who sees you for who you really are. I wasn't just talking about Chad." Olivia's heart stuttered. "Ethan, I don't," she started, but he continued before she could finish. "I know this is crazy," he said. "I know we just met. I know there are 1,000 logical reasons why this doesn't make sense. But I can't stop thinking about what you said in the garden, about being good at hiding, about expectations and pressure. I understand that. More than you know." "What do you do?" Olivia asked, realizing she had never actually found out. "For work, I mean." Ethan hesitated, and she felt him tense slightly. "I run a tech company, software development mostly. We do corporate solutions, data management, that kind of thing." "That sounds impressive," Olivia said, "and stressful." "It is both," Ethan agreed. "Which is why I'm supposed to be in Silicon Valley right now dealing with a potential investor who's threatening to pull funding, instead of here at my brother's wedding. But I made a promise to Chad that I'd be here, and for once I chose family over business. His partner, the one who called me in the garden, thinks I'm making a mistake. She thinks the company should always come first." "What do you think?" Olivia asked, genuinely curious. "I think," Ethan said slowly, "that I'm tired of putting everything else first. I'm tired of missing important moments because I'm busy building something that's supposed to make me happy, but mostly just makes me exhausted. I'm tired of feeling like success means sacrificing everything personal for something professional." Olivia understood that more than she wanted to admit. She had spent the last 5 years building her own career, working her way up from assistant to junior coordinator to her current position as senior event planner at a boutique firm in Manhattan. She had the apartment, the career trajectory, the appearance of having her life together. But she couldn't remember the last time she had felt genuinely happy rather than just accomplished. "What do you do?" Ethan asked, echoing her earlier question. "I plan events," Olivia said. "Corporate parties, charity galas, product launches. Anything where people need someone to make sure the flowers match and the catering is on time, and no one accidentally insults the guest of honor." "So you create beautiful moments for other people," Ethan said thoughtfully. "That's a gift. Or a talent for control and organization disguised as creativity," Olivia countered. "Depends on your perspective." Ethan laughed softly. "There you go again, being refreshingly honest." "It's my brand," Olivia said with a slight smile. Aggressive honesty delivered with a smile so people can't tell if I'm joking or not. "I can tell," Ethan said. "You're not joking. You're just brave enough to say what other people only think." They continued dancing, moving in slow circles around the floor while other couples swayed nearby. The tent was beautiful in the evening light, the string lights creating a warm glow that made everything feel magical and slightly unreal. Olivia knew this moment wouldn't last. Tomorrow, she would go back to her real life, back to her apartment and her job and her carefully maintained routines. Ethan would go back to Silicon Valley and his tech company and his investor problems. This was just a pause. Just a breath between the normal moments that made up actual existence. But God, it was a beautiful pause. "Olivia," Ethan said, his voice serious in a way that made her pay attention. "I'd like to see you again. After today." After the wedding, if you're interested. Olivia's practical side immediately listed all the reasons this was impossible. They lived in different states. They had demanding careers. They had just met at a wedding, which was basically the worst place to start a meaningful relationship, because weddings were designed to make everything seem more romantic than it actually was. They didn't really know each other. This was just chemistry and timing and the magic of an expensive event in a beautiful location. But her heart, that traitorous organ that never listened to logic, said yes before her brain could mount a proper argument. "I'd like that," Olivia heard herself say. "I'd like that a lot." Ethan's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. "Yeah?" "Yeah," Olivia confirmed, committed now to whatever this turned out to be. "Though I should warn you, I'm not great at long-distance anything. My houseplants die if I go on vacation because I forget to ask someone to water them. I once ghosted a pen pal in 4th grade because writing letters seemed like too much effort. I'm basically a terrible bet for any relationship that requires sustained communication over distance. Good thing I'm in Manhattan half the time for business meetings," Ethan said. "And I've been looking for an excuse to be there more often. My company is expanding, and we need an East Coast presence." "You're in Manhattan?" Olivia asked, surprised. "I thought you said Silicon Valley." "I have an apartment in both," Ethan explained, "though the Silicon Valley place is more where I actually live, and the Manhattan place is more where I occasionally sleep between meetings. But that could change if I had a reason to want to be in New York more often." Olivia felt something warm bloom in her chest. "That's very convenient, isn't it?" Ethan agreed, his blue eyes dancing with amusement. "Almost like fate arranged our geography to make this easier." "I don't believe in fate," Olivia said. "I believe in coincidence and probability, and the human tendency to see patterns where none exist." Ethan laughed, pulling her slightly closer. "Of course you do. That's very on brand for you." "You've known me for like 3 hours," Olivia protested. "How do you know what's on brand for me?" "Call it intuition," Ethan said. "Or maybe I'm just paying attention. You'd be surprised how much you can learn about someone when you actually listen to what they say instead of waiting for your turn to talk." Olivia paused, searching for the right word. "That's actually really insightful." "Don't sound so surprised," Ethan said, though his tone was teasing. "I occasionally have valuable thoughts." The song ended, transitioning into something more upbeat, and other guests began flooding onto the dance floor. Ethan and Olivia moved to the edge, neither quite ready to let go of the moment. Olivia saw Rebecca bouncing past with one of Chad's college friends, her face flushed with happiness, and probably champagne. This was Rebecca's day, her perfect wedding that had somehow survived missing best men and last-minute substitutions. Olivia felt a surge of affection for her friend, gratitude for the invitation that had brought her here, to this tent, to this moment, to Ethan. "I should probably go check on Rebecca," Olivia said reluctantly. "Make sure she doesn't need anything." Bridesmaid duties. "Of course," Ethan said, but he didn't release her hand immediately. "Before you go, can I give you my number? You know, in case you want to continue our discussion about cupcake philosophy or the merits of aggressive honesty." Olivia pulled out her phone, and they exchanged numbers, both of them taking perhaps more time than strictly necessary to make sure they were entered correctly. "There," Ethan said, pocketing his phone. "Now I can properly ask you out instead of just hoping we run into each other at another wedding." "I don't go to that many weddings," Olivia warned. "This is actually my first one in 2 years. Then I'll have to find other excuses to see you," Ethan said. "How do you feel about dinner? Or coffee? Or literally any activity that involves us being in the same location and talking?" "All of those sound good," Olivia said, smiling despite herself. "Text me when you're back in New York." "I will," Ethan promised. Count on it. Olivia walked away feeling lighter than she had in months, like something had shifted in her carefully structured world. She found Rebecca near the cake, gesturing animatedly while talking to her new mother-in-law, and Olivia hung back, not wanting to interrupt. She pulled out her phone and saw that Ethan had already texted her. Just one word, question mark, and a smiley face. Hi. Olivia bit her lip to keep from grinning like an idiot and texted back, Hi yourself. His response came quickly. Just wanted to make sure the number worked. Also wanted an excuse to text you. Mission accomplished, Olivia typed. Both objectives met successfully. She watched the 3 dots appear and disappear several times before his next message came through. Fair warning, I'm going to be terrible at playing it cool. I'm probably going to text you too much and overthink everything, and generally be the opposite of smooth. Olivia laughed out loud, earning a curious glance from a nearby guest. Good, she replied. I don't trust smooth. Smooth feels like a performance. I prefer honest and slightly awkward. Then we're going to get along great, Ethan sent back. Because I'm extremely honest and frequently awkward, despite what my publicist would prefer. You have a publicist? Olivia asked, suddenly realizing there might be aspects of Ethan's life she hadn't considered. Long story, Ethan replied. Involves a minor scandal with a tech blog, and my very poor judgment about what constitutes off the record. I'll tell you about it sometime when we have several hours, and possibly alcohol. Now I'm intrigued, Olivia typed. The rest of the evening passed in a pleasant blur. Olivia danced with various groomsmen and guests, ate more cake than was probably advisable, and caught up with old college friends she hadn't seen in years. But through it all, she was aware of her phone in her clutch, aware of the occasional buzz of a new message from Ethan, aware that something had shifted in her universe, and there was no going back to the way things were before. Around 10 o'clock, Rebecca pulled Olivia aside, her eyes bright with champagne and happiness. Okay, she said without preamble. What is happening between you and Ethan? Nothing, Olivia said automatically, then corrected herself. I mean, something? Maybe? I don't really know yet. She looked stunning, Rebecca said. You two have been making eyes at each other all night. Several people have commented on it. We have not been making eyes, Olivia protested. We've been, she paused, having a moment. A moment, Rebecca repeated, grinning. Is that what we're calling it? Yes, Olivia said firmly. A moment of connection between two people who may or may not see each other again after tonight. Though probably will, because he gave me his number and I gave him mine, and we've been texting for the last 2 hours. Rebecca squealed, actually squealed, and pulled Olivia into a hug. Oh my God, this is amazing. You and Ethan, I'm so here for this. Don't get too excited, Olivia warned, even as she returned the hug. We literally just met. This could be nothing. It could fizzle out in a week when we realize we have nothing in common except a shared experience at your wedding. Or, Rebecca countered, pulling back to look at Olivia seriously, it could be the start of something real. You don't know until you try. And you deserve to try, Liv. You deserve someone who looks at you the way Ethan has been looking at you all night. How has he been looking at me? Olivia asked, genuinely curious. Like you're the most interesting person in the room, Rebecca said simply. Like he can't quite believe his luck. Like he's already planning how to make sure you don't get away. Olivia felt her cheeks heat. That's just the wedding magic talking. Everyone looks more romantic at weddings. Maybe, Rebecca conceded. But I've known Ethan for 2 years, since Chad and I started dating. I've seen him at parties, and family dinners and holidays. I've watched women throw themselves at him, watched him politely deflect and keep his distance. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. So maybe give this a chance before you logic yourself out of it, okay? Okay, Olivia agreed softly. I'll try. Good, Rebecca said, then pulled Olivia in for another hug. Because you deserve happiness, Liv. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are. And if that someone happens to be Chad's ridiculously attractive and successful brother, well, that's just a bonus. They were interrupted by Chad calling for Rebecca. Something about cutting the garter or throwing the bouquet or some other wedding tradition that required the bride's immediate presence. Rebecca squeezed Olivia's hand once more and rushed off, leaving Olivia standing alone with her thoughts and her phone and the growing realization that maybe, possibly, she was in trouble. The rest of the weekend passed in a surreal haze of wedding aftermath and new possibilities. Olivia helped with the post-reception cleanup, attended the farewell brunch the next morning, where she and Ethan exchanged loaded glances across the buffet table, and finally said goodbye to Rebecca and Chad as they left for their honeymoon in Bali. Through it all, her phone buzzed with messages from Ethan, a constant thread of conversation that picked up wherever they left off, covering everything from their favorite books to their most embarrassing childhood memories, to their opinions on whether cereal counted as soup. Back in Manhattan, Olivia tried to return to normal life. She went back to work on Monday, dove into planning a product launch for a skincare company, coordinated with vendors and venues and caterers. She met Chloe for their weekly coffee date and tried to downplay the whole wedding situation, though Chloe saw right through her attempts at casual indifference. "You're glowing," Chloe said, stirring her latte with unnecessary focus. "You never glow." "I don't glow," Olivia protested. "I'm just well rested." "You got back from the Hamptons yesterday," Chloe pointed out. "There's no way you're well rested. You're texting someone, under the table, right now. I can see your arms moving." Olivia glanced down at her phone, where Ethan had just sent her a photo of the worst coffee he'd ever been served at a Silicon Valley startup meeting. The coffee looked like dirty dishwater, and his accompanying message read, "Just imagining how you would roast this place in a review." Olivia smiled despite herself, quickly typing back, "Something about dishwater and broken dreams, probably. Maybe a reference to how their beans are crying." "Okay, fine," Olivia admitted, setting her phone face down on the table. "I'm texting someone." "The someone from the wedding?" Chloe asked, leaning forward with interest. "The best man?" "His name is Ethan," Olivia said. "And yes, we've been texting, constantly, like teenagers who just discovered phones. It's embarrassing." "It's adorable," Chloe corrected. "You're allowed to be excited about someone, Liv. You're allowed to have a normal human reaction to meeting someone you connect with." "I know," Olivia said, "but it feels weird, like I'm setting myself up for disappointment. What if this is just the wedding talking? What if we meet up in person and realize we have nothing in common? What if he's only interested because I was a novelty at his brother's wedding, and now that we're back in real life, I'll seem boring?" "Has he given you any indication that he thinks you're boring?" Chloe asked pointedly. "No," Olivia admitted. "He actually seems really interested. He asks questions about my work and remembers details from conversations we had days ago. He sent me an article yesterday about event planning trends because he thought I'd find it interesting." "That's boyfriend behavior," Chloe said with satisfaction. "That's I'm genuinely invested in getting to know you behavior. Don't overthink this into oblivion. Just see where it goes." Olivia nodded, knowing Chloe was right, but unable to fully silence the anxious voice in her head that insisted this was too good to be true. She had been burned before, had given her heart to someone who turned out to be giving his heart to multiple people simultaneously. She had learned to be cautious, to protect herself, to keep her expectations realistic. But Ethan was making it very hard to maintain those carefully constructed walls. That night, Olivia was working late at her office, finalizing seating charts for an upcoming charity gala when her phone rang. Not a text, an actual phone call, which was so rare in her daily life that she almost didn't recognize the sound. Ethan's name flashed on the screen, and Olivia felt her stomach flip. "Hello?" she answered, trying to sound casual and probably failing. "Hi," Ethan's voice came through warm and slightly uncertain. "Is this a bad time?" "I know we've been mostly texting, but I wanted to actually hear your voice." "No," Olivia said, abandoning her seating chart and leaning back in her desk chair. "This is a good time." "How are you?" "Exhausted," Ethan admitted. "I've been in back-to-back meetings for the last 8 hours, and I'm pretty sure I've forgotten how to speak in non-corporate jargon. If I accidentally say synergy or circle back, I give you permission to hang up immediately." "Noted," Olivia said, smiling. "How did the investor situation work out? The one from the wedding?" "We came to an agreement," Ethan said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. "Turns out they just wanted to feel heard and important. Once I let them give a 90-minute presentation about their vision for the company's future direction, they were happy to sign." 90 minutes? Olivia said sympathetically. "That's brutal." "It was a small price to pay for keeping the funding," Ethan said, "though I did have to resist the urge to fake a medical emergency around hour 1. They fell into easy conversation, the kind that felt like putting on comfortable clothes after a long day. Ethan told her about his company's expansion plans and the headaches of managing remote teams across time zones. Olivia told him about the bridezilla she was currently working with, who had called her 17 times in one day to discuss napkin folds. They talked about their families, their friends, their completely different paths that had somehow led to the same rose garden at the same wedding. "I'm coming to New York next week," Ethan said eventually, his tone shifting to something more serious. "I have meetings on Thursday and Friday, but I was thinking, maybe we could have dinner. If you're free, if you're interested." "I'm interested," Olivia said, her heart doing that fluttery thing again. "Thursday works." "Perfect," Ethan said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I'll text you details once I finalize my schedule." "And Olivia?" "Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you again." "Me too," Olivia said softly. "Me too." After they hung up, Olivia sat at her desk, staring at her phone, and trying to process the fact that she had a date. A real date with Ethan. The man who had somehow managed to slip past all her defenses in the space of a few hours and several hundred text messages. Chloe was going to lose her mind when she found out. The days leading up to Thursday passed in a blur of nervous anticipation and overthinking. Olivia changed her outfit approximately 14 times before settling on a simple black dress that Chloe assured her was perfect for a first date with a tech billionaire. She left work exactly on time for once, rushed home to shower and change, and arrived at the restaurant Ethan had chosen with 5 minutes to spare. The restaurant was in the West Village, one of those places that looked understated from the outside, but was probably impossible to get reservations at without connections or serious money. Olivia gave her name to the hostess and was led to a quiet table near the back, where Ethan was already waiting. He stood when he saw her approaching, and Olivia's breath caught at the sight of him. He was wearing dark jeans and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, somehow managing to look both casual and put together in a way that should have been illegal. His face lit up when he saw her, his smile genuine and warm, and Olivia felt some of her nervousness melt away. "Hi," she said, suddenly shy in a way she hadn't been at the wedding. "Hi yourself," Ethan replied, moving around the table to pull out her chair. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," Olivia said, settling into her seat. "You clean up pretty well yourself, for someone who spends all day in meetings talking about synergy." Ethan laughed, returning to his own chair. "I promised myself I wouldn't talk about work tonight. This is a work-free zone, just two people having dinner and getting to know each other without the distraction of business crises or wedding obligations. Sounds perfect, Olivia said. And it was. The dinner was perfect, the conversation flowing as easily in person as it had over text. They ordered wine and appetizers and entrees they barely tasted because they were too busy talking. Ethan told her about growing up in Connecticut with Chad, about their parents' expectations, and the pressure to succeed that had driven him to build his company in the first place. Olivia told him about her own childhood in suburban New Jersey, about her mother's well-meaning attempts to turn her into a pageant queen, and her father's support of her decision to pursue event planning instead of the law career her parents had envisioned. They discovered shared loves, terrible movies they both found hilarious, a mutual hatred of networking events, a preference for cats over dogs that they both felt slightly guilty admitting. They debated important questions like whether pineapple belonged on pizza, and Olivia had never felt more seen, more understood, more like herself with another person. "I have a confession," Ethan said, as they shared a dessert that was probably too fancy for Olivia's palate, but tasted amazing anyway. "What's that?" Olivia asked, taking another bite of something chocolate and wonderful. "I Googled you," Ethan admitted, "after the wedding. I wanted to know more about you, and I couldn't wait for the natural flow of conversation to reveal everything. So I looked you up online." "That's not unusual," Olivia said, amused. "I Googled you too." "And?" Ethan prompted, looking both curious and nervous. "What did you find?" "That you're more successful than you let on," Olivia said honestly. "That your company is worth way more than I expected. That you've been on the cover of Forbes and TechCrunch and about a dozen other magazines I don't usually read. That people describe you as a visionary and a disruptor, and other words that sound impressive, but I'm not entirely sure I understand." Ethan winced slightly. "That's the public version. The carefully curated image my PR team wants people to see." "What's the real version?" Olivia asked. "The real version," Ethan said slowly, "is that I started the company because I was angry. I was fresh out of college, working for a tech firm that treated employees like disposable resources, and I was convinced I could do better. So I started my own company with the goal of proving that you could be successful without sacrificing ethics or humanity. And you succeeded," Olivia pointed out. "Beyond your wildest expectations, from what I read." "I did," Ethan agreed. "But somewhere along the way, I became the thing I was trying to avoid. I started prioritizing growth over people, profit over principles. I started missing family events and important moments because work was always more urgent. I became my father, basically, which was exactly what I swore I'd never do." "Is that why you almost missed your brother's wedding?" Olivia asked gently. Ethan nodded. "I had convinced myself that the investor meeting was more important, that Chad would understand, that I could make it up to him later. And then I realized I'd been making it up to him my whole life. I'd missed his college graduation because I had a product launch. I'd missed his 30th birthday because I was in Japan for a conference. I almost missed his wedding because I was afraid of disappointing investors I don't even particularly like. That's when I knew something had to change." "What changed?" Olivia asked. "I did," Ethan said simply. "Or I'm trying to. I realized that success doesn't mean anything if you're too busy to enjoy it, if you're too isolated to share it with people you care about. So I'm working on being more present, on making better choices about what actually matters. It's hard, and I backslide constantly. But I'm trying." Olivia reached across the table and took his hand, a gesture that felt both bold and completely natural. "I think that's brave," she said, "admitting you want to change and actually taking steps to do it. Most people just accept that this is how things are and never question whether it has to be that way." "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, his fingers tightening around hers. "That means a lot coming from you." They sat like that for a moment, hands linked across the table, the restaurant noise fading into pleasant background static. Olivia felt something settle in her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name, but that felt like coming home. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said eventually. "Of course," Olivia replied. "Why event planning?" Ethan asked. "Of all the careers you could have chosen, why did you decide to spend your life making sure other people's parties go smoothly?" Olivia considered the question, really thought about it instead of giving her usual practiced answer about loving the creative challenge and organizational aspects. "Honestly," she said, "I think I like the control. I like knowing that if I plan everything perfectly, if I anticipate every possible problem and have contingencies for the contingencies, then nothing can go wrong. It's probably a trauma response from growing up with a mother who created chaos everywhere she went. But there's something deeply satisfying about creating order out of potential disaster." Ethan smiled slightly. "That makes sense, and explains why you're probably very good at your job." "I am good at my job," Olivia said, with confidence she rarely allowed herself to feel. "I'm excellent at my job, actually. The problem is that I'm so focused on controlling work that I forget to actually live my life. I plan beautiful moments for other people, but I don't create them for myself. I'm so busy making sure everything is perfect that I miss the imperfect moments that actually matter." "Like what?" Ethan prompted gently. "Like meeting someone at a wedding and taking a chance on seeing where it goes, instead of immediately cataloging all the ways it could fail," Olivia said, meeting his eyes. "Like sitting in a garden with a stranger and being honest about my flaws, instead of presenting the carefully edited version of myself I usually show the world. Like this dinner right now, where I'm terrified and excited and completely out of my comfort zone, but refusing to run away because something tells me you might be worth the risk." Ethan's expression softened, his blue eyes warm in the candlelight. "You're definitely worth the risk," he said. "And for what it's worth, I'm terrified too. I'm terrified that I'm going to mess this up somehow, that I'm going to prioritize work at the wrong moment, or say the wrong thing, or fail to be what you need. But I'm willing to try anyway, because I haven't felt this kind of connection with anyone in longer than I can remember." They left the restaurant around 11, stepping out into the cool Manhattan night. The streets were still busy with people heading to bars or hailing cabs, the city alive with energy and possibility. Ethan offered to walk Olivia home, and she accepted. Grateful for more time, even though she knew she should probably play it cool and not seem too eager. They walked slowly, their hands brushing occasionally, until Ethan finally took hers properly, their fingers interlacing like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Olivia's apartment was in Chelsea, a 4th-floor walk-up in a building that had character instead of modern amenities, and charm instead of central air conditioning. They climbed the stairs together, Olivia very aware that this was the moment where she had to decide whether to invite him in or say goodnight at the door. "This is me," she said when they reached her apartment, suddenly nervous in a way she hadn't been all evening. "Thank you for dinner. It was perfect." "Thank you for coming," Ethan said, "for giving this a chance. For being exactly as interesting and honest and wonderful as I remembered from the wedding." He stepped closer, and Olivia's breath caught. Her back was against her apartment door, Ethan in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly, and Olivia's heart felt like it might explode from her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "Please." Ethan leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to change her mind. But Olivia had never been more certain of anything. When his lips finally met hers, soft and sure and perfect, Olivia felt like every romance novel cliché she'd ever rolled her eyes at was suddenly impossibly true. Fireworks and butterflies, and the sense that the world had shifted on its axis, all of it real and overwhelming and absolutely worth the risk. The kiss deepened. Ethan's hands coming up to cup her face, while Olivia's fingers tangled in his hair. And for a moment, the entire world narrowed to just this. Just them. Just the perfect rightness of being exactly where they were supposed to be. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Olivia rested her forehead against his and laughed softly. That was, she started, searching for words. Really good, Ethan finished for her. Really, really good. They stood there in the hallway for another moment before Olivia made a decision. Do you want to come in? She asked. For coffee? Or to continue this conversation somewhere that isn't my building's hallway, where my neighbors can hear everything? I would love to, Ethan said, his voice rough in a way that made Olivia's stomach flip. If you're sure. I'm sure, Olivia said, fumbling with her keys and finally managing to unlock the door. Inside, her apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning, which meant there were shoes by the door and mail on the counter and probably dishes in the sink. But Ethan didn't seem to notice or care. He followed her into the small living room, looking around with genuine interest at the space that Olivia had spent 3 years turning into something that felt like home. This is nice, he said, taking in the mismatched furniture and the gallery wall of photos and the plants that were thriving under Chloe's care. It feels like you. Thanks, Olivia said, suddenly self-conscious about the difference between her modest apartment and what she imagined Ethan's places looked like. It's not much, but it's mine. It's perfect, Ethan corrected, turning to look at her with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe, just like you. And then he was kissing her again, and Olivia stopped thinking about apartments and differences and all the logical reasons this shouldn't work. She gave herself over to the moment, to the feeling of Ethan's arms around her, to the intoxicating certainty that this was exactly where she wanted to be. They eventually made it to the couch, tangled together in a way that was both urgent and gentle, exploring this new territory with a care that suggested they both understood how important this was. Ethan pulled back after a while, his breathing uneven, and looked at her seriously. We should probably slow down, he said, though his hand stayed on her waist. I don't want to rush this. I don't want you to think that's all I'm here for. I don't think that, Olivia said, her own voice slightly breathless. But you're probably right. We should take this slowly. Make sure it's real. They settled into a more respectable position, Olivia tucked against Ethan's side, his arm around her shoulders. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic, learning each other's stories and secrets and dreams. Olivia told him about her failed relationship with her ex, about the trust issues it had left her with. Ethan told her about the loneliness of success, about how hard it was to know if people wanted him or his money. The honesty between them felt radical, like they had both decided that if this was going to work, it needed to be built on truth rather than carefully curated versions of themselves. Somewhere around 3 a.m, they both started yawning. Exhaustion catching up with the adrenaline of the evening, Ethan reluctantly said he should go, that he had early meetings and needed at least a few hours of sleep. Olivia walked him to the door, neither of them quite ready to let go. I'll see you tomorrow? Ethan asked, his hand lingering on her cheek. I have meetings until late afternoon, but maybe dinner again? I'd like that, Olivia said. Text me when you're free. I will, Ethan promised, pressing one more soft kiss to her lips. Sweet dreams, Olivia. You too, she replied, watching as he made his way down the stairs, turning once to wave before disappearing around the corner. Olivia closed her door and leaned against it, a smile spreading across her face that she couldn't have stopped if she tried. Chloe was going to absolutely lose her mind when she heard about this. The next few weeks fell into a pattern that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Ethan came to New York every week, sometimes for a few days, sometimes just overnight. They had dinner, went to museums, explored neighborhoods Olivia had never bothered to visit despite living in the city for years. They texted constantly when they were apart, long conversations and quick check-ins and random thoughts they wanted to share. Ethan sent her photos from his Silicon Valley office, the view from his window that showed the city sprawling below. Olivia sent him pictures of the events she planned, the beautiful moments she created for other people. They talked on the phone late at night, falling asleep with their phones still connected, the sound of each other's breathing a comfort across the miles. It was intense and consuming, and everything Olivia's practical side warned her against. But for once, she ignored the warnings and let herself fall. She was halfway in love with Ethan before she allowed herself to acknowledge it, and completely gone by the time she finally admitted it to Chloe over brunch on a Sunday morning. "I'm in love with him," Olivia said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. "I know it's fast and probably crazy, but I can't help it. He's everything I didn't know I was looking for." Chloe reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I know, honey. I've known for weeks. You light up whenever he texts you. You smile at your phone like it holds all the secrets of the universe. You're happier than I've ever seen you." "Is that a bad thing?" Olivia asked nervously. "It's the best thing," Chloe assured her. "You deserve this. You deserve someone who makes you feel like you're worth changing your whole life for." "Has he said he loves you?" Chloe asked. "Not yet," Olivia admitted. "But I think he might. There are moments where I catch him looking at me like I'm the most important thing in his world, like he can't quite believe I'm real. Those are the moments that make me think this might actually work." "Then tell him," Chloe encouraged. "Life's too short to play it safe with your feelings. If you love him, tell him. See what happens." Olivia considered it as she walked home from brunch, her mind turning over the possibilities. She could tell Ethan how she felt, could lay her heart bare and hope he felt the same way. Or she could wait, could let things develop naturally, could protect herself just a little bit longer. But protection felt like cowardice now, felt like wasting the precious time they had together by holding back. That evening, when Ethan called from the airport on his way back to California, Olivia made a decision. "Hey," she said when he answered, his voice warm and familiar. "How was your week?" "Busy," Ethan replied. "But better now that I'm hearing your voice. When can I see you again? I'm back in New York on Wednesday for a board meeting." "Dinner that night?" "Actually," Olivia said, her heart pounding, "I was thinking maybe I could come to California, visit you in Silicon Valley, see where you live and work, get a better picture of your life there." Ethan was quiet for a moment, and Olivia felt panic start to rise. Was that too forward? Too presumptuous? "I would love that," Ethan said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "I would absolutely love that." "When can you come?" "I have next weekend off," Olivia said. "If that works for you." "It works perfectly," Ethan said. "I'll send you flight information." "And Olivia?" "Yeah? Thank you for wanting to see my world, for being willing to come here instead of always making me come to you. It means more than you know." "Of course," Olivia said softly. "This is important to me. You're important to me." "You're important to me too," Ethan said. "More important than I think you realize." The week passed in a blur of nervous anticipation and careful planning. Olivia coordinated her work schedule, packed a bag, and tried not to overthink what visiting Ethan's home meant for their relationship. Chloe assured her it was a good sign, that people didn't invite you into their personal space unless they were serious about you. Rebecca. who had returned from her honeymoon glowing and married, told Olivia to just enjoy the moment and stop trying to analyze everything to death. When Olivia's flight landed in San Francisco on Friday evening, Ethan was waiting for her at arrivals with a sign that read, "Olivia's personal chauffeur service," which made her laugh and several other travelers smile. He pulled her into a hug that lasted long enough to make her forget they were in a crowded airport and kissed her like they'd been apart for months instead of days. "I missed you," he murmured against her hair. "I know it's only been a week, but I missed you." "I missed you too," Olivia admitted, breathing in the familiar scent of him. "This is real, isn't it? This thing between us." "It's real," Ethan confirmed, pulling back to look at her seriously. "It's the most real thing in my life right now." The drive to Silicon Valley was beautiful in the fading light, the landscape shifting from urban to suburban to the sprawling tech campuses that defined the area. Ethan's apartment was in a modern building with glass walls and minimalist design, exactly what Olivia had expected, and somehow still surprising. Inside, it was spacious and well-designed, but oddly impersonal, like a high-end hotel rather than someone's home. "This is where you live?" Olivia asked, looking around at the expensive furniture and the view that showcased the valley below. "Technically," Ethan said, setting down her bag. "But I spend most of my time at the office or traveling. This is more where I sleep occasionally." "It's beautiful," Olivia said, though she was already comparing it to his Manhattan apartment, which had felt more lived in, more like him. "But it doesn't feel like you." Ethan smiled slightly. "That's because it's not really me. The person who lives here is the CEO version of me, the one who's supposed to have everything together and perfectly curated. The real me is somewhere between here and New York, trying to figure out which version is authentic." "I like all your versions," Olivia said, walking over to him. "The CEO and the brother, and the man who sits in rose gardens making cupcake jokes. You don't have to choose just one." "Good," Ethan said, pulling her close, "because I'm not sure I could if I tried." That night, they had dinner at Ethan's favorite local restaurant, a small Italian place that was completely unpretentious and served the best pasta Olivia had ever tasted. Ethan introduced her to the owner, who clearly knew him well and teased him about finally bringing a girlfriend around. Olivia tried not to read too much into the word girlfriend, but her heart definitely skipped. The next day, Ethan took her to his office, showing her the sprawling campus where his company was headquartered. Olivia met his business partner, Sarah, a sharp woman in her 40s, who looked at Olivia with undisguised curiosity and later pulled Ethan aside for a conversation Olivia couldn't hear, but could definitely feel the intensity of. "Everything okay?" Olivia asked when Ethan returned, his expression slightly strained. "Fine," Ethan said. "Sarah just wanted to make sure I wasn't making a mistake. She's protective of the company." "And of you?" Olivia prompted gently. "And of me," Ethan admitted. "She thinks I'm distracted lately, less focused on work. She's not wrong. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's necessary." "Is it me?" Olivia asked, worry creeping into her voice. "Am I the distraction?" "Yes," Ethan said honestly, then quickly continued at her hurt expression. "But in the best way. You make me remember that there's more to life than quarterly earnings and investor calls. You make me want to be present instead of always thinking about the next thing. That's not a distraction. It's a correction. I needed you, Olivia. Even before I met you, I needed someone to remind me why I started this company in the first place." They spent the rest of the weekend exploring the area, talking about their lives and their hopes and the future they might build together. On Sunday afternoon, sitting on Ethan's balcony watching the sun set over the valley, Olivia finally found the courage to say what had been building in her chest for weeks. I love you, she said, the words quiet but certain. I know it's fast, and maybe too soon, but I can't keep it to myself anymore. I love you, Ethan. And I'm terrified of what that means, but I'm more terrified of not telling you. Ethan turned to look at her, his blue eyes bright with emotion. I love you too, he said, his voice rough. I've been trying to find the right moment to tell you, the perfect words. But the truth is, there is no perfect moment. There's just this, just us, just the fact that I fell in love with you in a rose garden, and I've been falling deeper ever since. They kissed as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, and Olivia felt like every risk she'd taken, every moment of fear she'd pushed through, had been worth it for this. For Ethan, for love, for the possibility of a future she had never let herself imagine before now. What did you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what's your rating? Subscribe to the channel if you want more heartwarming stories like this one. See you in the next story.